is Pensacola Bay. And this has had a great deal of, let's say, naval and military importance historically. The whole Gulf region has been. So, go back to the Civil War. I believe the operation was called Anaconda, just sees Mississippi River, stranglehold from the south. That was a big deal. Go a little bit further in time, you got British influence and concern, and sometimes there was French influence in here. A lot of history in the area, as we've talked about before. And Pensacola was a fantastic option. We had the barrier islands in the area. We had protected bays. We had sufficiently deep water shoals that could bring real ships in. This was a real prized asset. And because of that, they set up a system of forts across the Gulf Coast, the barrier islands, one of which being Fort Pickens, where we currently are. Another one, for interlocking or overlapping fields of fire, was Fort McRae. Fort Pickens, I always got the impression was kind of the big brother here. Fort McRae was nice, but nothing special. They controlled this inlet with the guns, and you'll see some of them. They've still got them up on some of the ramparts. You'll see why they controlled this area. The firepower was impressive. So they sat here. Fort McRae was on the other side. The kind of cross fields of fire was a fantastic idea from a military standpoint. And that's the reason this is here. It's very much a military presence, obviously it's fort, but the particular location was not only could they reach out and touch anything coming in from the past, but if it did get through, they still had a range of fire, and it would have to make the loop around and come back into Pensacola Bay. So we all understand the basic dynamics here. You come around, you make a turn to come through. It's big, long, slow work, especially going back to the time when you were in sails. Not where you want to be. You don't want to sit under big guns coming down and the shells on. So that's the reason this is here. Keep this in mind. We'll talk a few points around here, whatever we go crazy, and explore whatever we want to. But here about enslaved labor making bricks. That's true, and that held. And I'm telling you what I heard on a talk when I came here before. I'm parroting. But allegedly, for some of the work being done, the indentured labor, the slave labor they were using at the time, didn't have the skill sets. They had to bring in specialized teams for some of the specialized brickwork, but in addition to how they get laid and constructing buttresses and overall structure that could withstand a bombardment when time came. So you see some of the bricks here are quite old. I would fully believe you told me original. Catherine was pointing out earlier, you saw the stalactites starting to come through. Well, yes, the mortar they had was crushed lime and material and working as cement. So we all understand it's a calcium carbonate base. It's going to dissolve. You'll get stalactites. I think I saw the same thing when you walked in. This is so cool. But when you look at some of the older brick structures, it's not hard to understand through time and probably some level of neglect. You're going to start having a breakdown of the structures of pieces that were put together. And there's a lot of history here, but if you think about trying to build a fort, we drove here. You see this is kind of the middle of nowhere. You're bringing everything in by ship. And you're having to ship in, either the bricks have to be made locally, which some were, as pointed out. I think Pensacola set up eventually and started making brick manufacturing, as Brad was talking about. But I also understand that some of the original ones brought in actually came in on boat and barge and were over Georgia area somewhere. Is again what I'm remembering from the talk that I heard before. So this wasn't as simple as saying, let's go make some bricks. Let's use the labor we have on site. There was a lot more that went into this, which is not hard to believe how many bricks just got stacked to make all this. I got this. I'm going to take you all the way across the far end for one more talk, and then we'll spend some time wondering and climbing. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about force or momentum. Either way, what we got here is a whole lot of weight of shell coming down. And that was the point. This was designed as a deterrent. If you got hit, which was no guarantee, your shooting a ball this big at a target about a mile that way. Like, sure, how can this go badly? But when it heads home, yeah, it goes real badly for the ship anyway. So this was very much in action. You can see the mounts, the wheels, they were way too big to reposition by hand. They had to actually put this thing on guided rails to move it around. Time in the Civil War, November 22nd and 23rd specifically, 1861, where Union troops were here at Fort Pickens, and Fort McRae, across the way, the one I pointed out before, held by the Confederacy. The story goes the two of them stood there, fired back and forth. It was exciting, I'm certain. So the site of Fort McRae here, Fort Pickens here, across the water. You can see over there, we still have the same land. Now, granted, we've had a little bit of longshore transport, a little bit of change and movement of sediments. So whereas Fort McRae used to sit on solid land here, when the time of this picture was taken, this is already half underwater. Barrier Islands, it's a constant line. In fact, Fort McRae specifically was an interesting site because when I came down here initially and I was talking to him, poked my head in and said, "Hey guys, can I talk to a park ranger or something? I'm setting up a field trip." And they said, "Sure, come on back." And I got to go to the secret park ranger lounge. It was pretty awesome. But they got to talking, and the guy instantly said, "Looking to bring in a group." "Oh yeah, that'd be fantastic. If we got them over to the Fort McRae site, you guys could do a dig." I said, "I don't think we're talking about the same thing here." He said, yeah, you can unearth it and catalog everything. I think you think about archaeology. So,
we don't do that.
It'll be perfect. Yeah, so you guys know all about the soils and good talk. So we did not include a dig for the remnants of Fort McRae, which eventually did fall into disrepair, and as the water came through, it ate away, the island shifted. There is still evidence allegedly there. There's still foundations and beams and pillars, but it's been sedimented in. It's been eaten. So beams fell, the sediment rolled over the top. You got little dunes forming over them. This historic site, outside of historical documents, is pretty well gone. It's the nature of barrier islands. They move, and if you don't do something to change that, you lose whatever. So I'm sure it was quite exciting and incredibly loud when the two of these are shelling each other back and forth. I can only imagine the noise. But long story short, from what I understand of the history, they pretty much accomplished nothing. They spent a lot of time sending shells back and forth, and while they might have had some minor hits here and there, major loss of life, destroying the fort, not really, not so much. So it wasn't the bombardment as I remember it, but apparently General Bragg thought it was one of the heaviest bombardments in the world for a shell. You know, normally, yeah, you've got ships going back and forth with forts, but to truly have two forts set up going at each other, that's got to be a fairly unique event. They're not normally controlled by two different groups in space so close that they can do that. So, kind of an unusual historical fact. So,